Maskell, who's founder of the Pecorino Group, Jennifer Dine, who's former general manager at Unilever Ice Cream for the UK and Ireland, and Alessandra Bellini, who's founder of Bellini Works. Thanks ever so much.
Okay, thanks very much. It's very hard to know whether you can hear. Can you hear okay? Is it coming through? Okay, great. So thanks for that setup. So AI and marketing is very much in the zeitgeist at the moment, and certainly in a conference like this, there's a lot of discussion about AI technology and what's the real impact on marketing and brands. And we thought that we would tackle this approach from the kind of marketing perspective. All three of us on this panel are ex-Unilever. So Unilever, if nothing else, knows something about branding and how to build brands. And we've all kind of dealt with the kind of more classic years of building brands in the kind of so-called classic and traditional way. So I've got with me Jennifer, who's formerly running the Unilever ice cream business. We know a lot about brands in Unilever ice cream. And Ali Bellini, who was also my business partner when we were working on ice cream at Unilever, but then went on to become CMO of Tesco. So again, she knows a lot about how brands have been built traditionally over time. And in our kind of current reality, we're dealing with this kind of upsurge of technology, and it isn't just AI, it's performance marketing and MarTech, which is really disrupting the way that we build brands and the way we operate. So Jen, going to you first. I mean, you've been recently running an operating company in the UK, so you've felt firsthand the challenges of technology in brand building and marketing. What was your lived experience?
Well, I must say, from my personal point of view, I really believe that AI is going to be a brand transformation tool for the business in the future. So I'm one of those who believe very strongly in it's a complementarianism to what we do. Marketing has always been a mix between science and creativity. It's always been about short-term sales, but driving long-term brand equity. That hasn't changed. Just because AI is bringing a different way of measuring return on investment, a different way of executing how we do our media, it doesn't mean that the big brand ideas are less important. In fact, I believe that they're even more important because the emotional connection that you need behind a brand, the consumer insight that you need behind a brand is becoming even more critical because you need to be able to keep that as your due north, to be able to execute it throughout the AI journey and throughout all the different tools and tech that are coming our way to enhance that. I believe personally, as brand marketeers in this room, it's our job to really make sure that we are not victims of AI, that actually we leverage it to empower our businesses in the right way to take us into the next century. It's going to be the difference between brands that stay relevant to ones that disappear over time.
Okay, I don't know whether I can share your optimism, Jen. I'm dealing with a lot of challenges around the kind of Uber fragmentation, the Uber personalization. A lot of times I see big brand ideas getting atomized and fragmented by very targeted social media, which is not necessarily fully on strategy, etc. And I see this only getting more empowered by AI and performance marketing. So Ali, tell us about your experience with this.
So I have quite a strong view about the term performance marketing. I'll get to AI. I think that is potentially killing the brand. The idea that performance and marketing is reduced to a slice of what really marketing is about. Whether you're doing search, whether you're doing social media, the algorithm driving all of that, it's brilliant and you can measure it, but that's not marketing. That's just a little bit of one of the levers of marketing. And when you talk about performance marketing like that, it feels like everything else you do in marketing, when you build a brand, somehow doesn't perform. So I'm really, really object to the name. Having said that, that's the name it has. But I think it's very, very important that we understand that's not marketing. It's a little piece of it. Now, AI has powered that for a long, long time. Machine learning has been around for a long, long time. Now we were saying we use AI, which is generative AI, as the new way because of this ability of thinking and building on what the algorithm has done before. I really believe in that. I think it can help all marketeers to distill really strong insights, to really search for these insights by analyzing the data and the behaviors of the customers, to help create really distinctive and powerful brand ideas. and yes, potentially help companies to create materials that are more personalized. I do worry about fragmentation of the idea. I think AI should be used as a tool by marketeers to power and enhance the magic that you were referring to create ideas that are really powerful, really big, and they can be really personal. There are statistics that say when you drive personalization, that can drive between 20 and 30% better return. That's fantastic. As long as it is relevant, it is part of the same brand, it is built the same idea, and it's not just bits of communication. And my last point is I think the marketing measuring marketing performance is both the short term and the long term. And every piece of communication, whether it's a small tweet or X, how do we call a tweet that's on X? A small piece of X communication or a long form, all of it needs to sell, engage, as well as build a brand. And I suppose my question back to you and everyone else is, are we prepared to invest in really bringing up the new generations of marketeers who understand the difference between a little bit of social media, that's not marketing, and the broader marketing and how you build big ideas using the tools that generative AI allows us to use?
Yeah, thanks, Ali. I think that's a great provocation because I think there is a risk with this kind of uber results-driven culture that we now live in. In fact, we heard Rory Sutherland this morning talking about the difference between instant gratification versus magic and big ideas, and the fact that we live in a world now where often if you can't measure the ROI, the return on investment on a piece of magic, then is it worth doing? And I think anyone who's been involved in Uber campaigns like Nike Just Do It or Think Different from Apple knows that they weren't built on an ROA basis. They were built on belief and passion that these ideas can work. So I think what I'd like to come back to maybe with you, Jen, is what about the magic? I mean, over the years, we've all worked with the so-called magic, and we understand there's a lot of debate with the finance team about should we spend money on that, because I can't see where it's going. What happens to that in an era of AI?
I think the magic will always be really important. It's what defines a brand and what makes it different to your competition. If you lose your magic, if you lose your spark, you lose the competitive edge. I think what's really important is for us to, as marketeers, ensure that we don't lose sight of the importance of that magic in the business context that we operate in. The pressure on short-term sales will always be there. It's our jobs as a brand guardians to defend the brand, make sure it remains consistent, brings its magic to the fore, and make sure that it's delivered over time in a personal and engaging way to our consumers. If we take a step back and we only do transactional execution, if we only end up doing performance marketing in short-term sales bursts all the time with no big idea, no big truth, no brand emotional connection, that's the point at which a brand dies. And so you need to make sure as brand custodians that we can manage both the business performance metrics that we need to deliver, because we are operating in business, but at the same time understand and rationalize and defend the importance of magic. Because we know the biggest brand sales come when you have the magic and you have the logic. It's not one or the other. I'm not sure, Ali, your view?
No, I agree. I think you can actually measure the magic as well. I mean, by now there's plenty of ways you can do it. We live in a blessed era where everything we do as marketeer can be measured. I actually think you can measure the magic as well. You know, there's lots of ways you can measure a brand power and the idea, the strength of an idea. I do think that doesn't substitute the judgment you have as a practitioner. You know, you have all these tools, you have all this science, you have all this data. In fact, I think we have too much data, and sometimes we pick the wrong one, or we follow the thread without following the money, the ideas. So there'll always be need for judgment, for expertise, for understanding what is the right question to ask, and what are out of all the potential answers that we have. And that's where I feel really passionately that as marketeers we need to continue to invest in training, in experience, because just by reading data we don't necessarily find the right answer, I believe.
So Yeah, thanks. I agree with that, Ali. I think that when we talk about AI in marketing, we tend to go straight to generative AI. We talk about, obviously ChatGPT. We talk about the ability to do creative work with AI tools. But in reality, I think what we've been talking about up till now is that behind the scenes, the machine learning, the stuff that powers the social media and the algorithm is not really generative AI per se. But just to come to generative AI, Coke this year made their Christmas ad using Gen AI, and that was quite controversial. Personally, I thought it was quite a successful campaign. Well, not personally. I understand it was a successful campaign. What do you think about brands like Coke making their ads very cheaply using Gen AI? And is it the future?
I think we all need to learn.
Yeah.
We just need to learn. I personally thought it was just as good or as bad as any other Coke ad. In terms of the Christmas one, the Christmas ads for Coca-Cola always feel a little bit sleek and glitzy and cheesy, and that was perfectly, aligned to
Yeah, I
that.
agree.
So if it worked before and you can do it more affordably, that's fine, I suspect. There was so I did ask generative AI what I should be saying today, and they gave me 3 points. And I thought one interesting statistic was that 27% of consumers say today that AI-generated content, so creative content, doesn't feel emotionally engaging or very human. Now, my bet is that percentage will go down over time because creative teams and marketeers will learn how to use generative AI much better to enhance, empower the ideas, even executionally, and also people will get used to it. So it'll be hard to say what's what.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But it's interesting, how much do you need to keep the human element, and how do you recognize it? Is it the imperfections? Is it the fact that it's not sleek? And is it right for your brand? So I don't feel I can judge it. I think we're all learning.
Yeah, and it is true that the crazy thing about AI is it learns as well. So all the stuff that works, it does more of. All the stuff that doesn't work, it doesn't do. So it does learn, obviously. So, Jen, I guess the kind of, for me, the big question is, will we see future brands grow up like Nike, like Apple, brands that we've grown up with, like Coke, which have been built over many, many years of consistency using, the so-called traditional methods? Is that over, that era, do you think, or are we going to see more of that in the future?
I think it's going to be a lot more challenging for brands in the future to build that level of scale over time. I think the biggest challenge is the attention, the battle for attention that brands are now facing. So at the time of the big Nike ads, the big Just Do It's, the Coca-Colas of the world, television was the mainstream of media. Yes, they could adjust their media mix according to that, but it was very focused. And everyone was looking at the same thing, seeing the same ad, talking about the same Santa Claus at Christmas. Now, it's going to be completely customized through technology, through media. Every single one of us is going to have a completely different experience of a brand, although the truth behind the brand will be consistent. So the question then is, well, what does it mean for smaller brands who want to start from scratch, who want to create their own big brands in the future? How do you do that in a highly fragmented way, but in a way that generates the consistency, the brand heritage, and the emotional connection you need for big brands over time?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think it's the uber fragmentation, as I said earlier, which is going to be the real challenge. And I think I struggle to see a future with brands of the epic scale of Nike and Apple and Coke, because I think they were built in a different era. But Ali, you've worked with some pretty big brands. What do you think about this? The future?
I was thinking. I heard a statistic that because of the increased use of generative AI, especially younger generation and students are losing the ability of critical thinking. And I was thinking about that as marketeers, again, going back to exercising your judgment, having the experience and exercising critical thinking when you create a campaign with your agency or creative teams. In an era where everything is done for you very easily at the press of a button, will it make us all, including myself, lazier? I can ask ChatGPT what to say today in 3 points rather than thinking about it myself. And like that, will it make us all going for the easier solution, the one that's been made at the press of a button, without the critical the habit of thinking critically, asking ourselves, interrogating ourselves, having higher standards. That's the question I have as we brief, create, judge, and execute a campaign ourselves directly or with a team. How much will we retain the ability to think critically? Or will we go for the easy solution? And is there anything wrong with going with an easy solution?
I think that's a really interesting point, because anyone who's worked on building a campaign for a brand knows about the struggle and the kind of the feeling of inadequacy in the face of what came before. And
Will it work?
Will it work? Can we replicate the success? I mean, I work very closely with the guys that made the John Lewis ad every year, and every year they faced the same dilemma: will it work? But I think they were craftspeople that really understood how to craft an idea, understand an insight, dig out a creative solution to the insight. And I think it's a very interesting point that as we become slaves to the algorithm, as it were, will we retain that skill within our community? And I think I'm conscious that we need to wrap this up in a few minutes, but I'd like to ask both of you, what advice would you give to the next generation who wants to build great brands and be involved in this kind of wonderful tradition of marketing that we all have been involved in, when you're dealing with a world which is driven by the algorithm, essentially?
I think I'd probably call out three things. It doesn't matter what brand you work on, what company you're working for, you need to be passionate about what you do. Passion will make you perform, and the best marketeers are the ones who passionately love what they do. So find what you're passionate about. That could be a brand that's starting from scratch, or it could be a multinational brand. It could be a brand that has existed only in D2C or is on the shelves of Tesco. But find what makes you excited, because I think that's really, really important as a marketeer, because that gives you energy and resilience, and it gives you the power to plow through things. I think the other one, which Ali made a really good point on now, is you need to develop your gut instinct, and that comes through experience and time. Expose yourselves to different industries, expose yourselves to other people, other networks in marketing, outside of marketing, other functions. I know we all joke about our finance business partners, but actually they're your best sparring partner as a marketeer, because they will challenge you in ways that you are not wired for naturally. So put yourself out there, and that would make you a really strong marketeer that has transferable skills, no matter what the future looks like.
So don't be bullied by the algorithm, Ali. Do you agree with that?
No, I think embrace it, learn all about it, learn about all the different tools. I think AI or generative AI is wonderful as a new tool. Learn how to make your job in the areas where it needs to be made easier, better, more powerful, faster. Spend more time thinking, creating, learning, educating yourself and your team. Being in touch with your customers. Don't forget about them. Listen to them, and then forget everything they say and judge. Use your critical thinking to know how you build your brand for them, because they'll never tell you what they haven't seen. So, which is also what generative AI can't do yet. Might be able to do it one day, but it can only tell you what's been done before and bring it together well. They can't tell you what's not been done. And as long as we retain the brain and the spirit and the soul and the experience to create new things, I think we'll be fine. I would totally embrace the AI tools, but then reserve judgment and critical thinking and use it for the best.
So I've got to be honest with you, you've both been much more optimistic than I think I was at the start of this, because I sort of feel I'm fighting the algorithm a lot at the moment and not what I'm doing. But I think what I've heard everyone say, or you guys say, is one, you have to keep the human dimension in marketing. We are humans. Most of our customers are humans, and not feel that the algorithm and AI has the answer for everything. As Ali said, the AI is clever because it can tell you what came before, but it can't necessarily predict what's going to happen next. And I think a lot of the skill and art of building brands is tapping into the human zeitgeist of what's really going on in people's lives, and then bringing to that your passion and using common sense. I mean, I think it's a really good point about common sense. I think all of us that use ChatGPT have seen the kind of stupid responses it gives us for questions that we know the answer to. And it only amplifies that if you ask it more complicated questions. So I think my wrap-up of this discussion would be 1, passion, 2, common sense, and 3, don't be bullied by AI.
But embrace it.
Embrace it. And I think we're pretty much out of time. So Ali, Jen, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.